Hello and welcome to another episode of Finding Mr. Height, the podcast. I am your host, Allie Jackson, and I am bringing you my positive and practical approach to dating, relationships, and a whole lot else from my lived experience. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to chat with you this week. If you are watching the video on YouTube, you can see that I have my curls out, and it's my second attempt at my new curly routine, and I'm even happier with it this time on day 2. I did it yesterday, so I'm super happy about that. Before we get into updates, this week's guest is Monica Tanner. I absolutely loved my conversation with her. She is a marriage coach and she is the author of a book called Bad Marriage Advice, which I found out on our recording, the background of which I didn't realize, was that she was writing a letter to her son when he told her that he was ready to get married or getting married. And she was telling him all of the advice that she had and mostly like debunking advice that other people have. And that was sort of the basis of the book. It turned into this whole thing where she talks about relationship myths that very well-meaning people are passing down like their gospel. And we go through a bunch of them in this episode, give our thoughts and, kind of chat back and forth. She's been married for 24 years, so she's really been through it. She's not just theorizing here. I learned a lot in this conversation. I think you will too. And I think you're really going to like her. So I'm excited for you to hear that interview. But before that, some updates on my end. So like I said, I am deep in my curly hair journey. Something occurred to me this week, actually, because Facebook so lovingly provided me with a memory from 20 years ago when I was 19. And it was a just truly lovely photo of me and a situationship of mine that I had freshman year of college before we had the word situationship. Brief background on that, because, oh my Lord, this just came up in my memories. And I was like, fuck, I forgot about this dude. We'll call him, I don't know, Mario Kart guy. So I met him in a math lecture and we were like randomly sitting next to each other in this math lecture my freshman year, spring semester. And sat next to him, thought he was super cute. We would like chit chat throughout the lecture. And then slowly over time, we would like talk a little after class. And then one time we went and got lunch after class. And next thing you know, we were talking about going and playing Mario Kart because I had, not next thing you know, I obviously plotted this. I had a Nintendo 64 in my dorm room at the time that I had brought with me from home that I had had forever. Nintendo 64s were already at that point like no longer really being made. And I had an old school one. And I was telling him about that and like low-key loved using it as like a little, selling point of like coming and hanging out with me because I was 19 and very insecure. And so he and I would like play Mario Kart in my dorm room. We'd make out. I was obsessed with him and really wanted to be in a relationship. Frankly, at that time, probably with anyone, but I really wanted him to be in a relationship with him. And eventually I told him this and he was like, I'm not ready for a relationship. Like he'd been in like a very serious relationship in high school and he just wanted to be single and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I totally understand. I didn't understand. And I should have stopped seeing him, but I didn't. And I'm sure many of us can relate. And I just sort of continued on in the nature that we'd been. However, one of the things that in hindsight is ridiculous that he said to me, he was like, I'm not ready for a relationship right now, but when I am, I'm going to walk into the courtyard of King's Court, which was my freshman year dorm, and I'm going to swipe my pen card and I'm going to go up to the third floor, whatever floor I lived on, and I'm going to turn left and then I'm going to knock on like he literally like out loud, like verbally said how he was going to navigate himself to my dorm room to tell me that he was ready for a relationship. And I fucking lapped it up. It was obviously bullshit. He was in a relationship with somebody else like 3 weeks later, and I was devastated. And I'm telling you this story because it is just indicative of my mental state at the time and like the way that I pinned so much of my self-worth on whether men liked me or not, and being the quote unquote chill girl, like the girl who has Mario Kart in her dorm room. Don't get me wrong though. I loved Mario Kart. Like that was a legitimate, authentic thing that I really liked. but I was playing it up to be that chill girl who had video games in her dorm room and who like didn't care if you just wanted to make out and leave and like not talk to her outside of that. Because I'm so chill and cool and nothing bothers me. Like that was who I was, not who I was, but that's too unkind to myself. That was how I presented myself and how I navigated through the world with really, really terrible self-esteem when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And this is coming back to my hair, I promise. So when I think back to that time in my life, honestly, I get like very deep secondhand embarrassment. Frankly, as I think about much of my 20s as well, secondhand, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, like feeling secondhand embarrassment looking back on your own life. But you know what? She was doing the best with the tools that she had at the time. She had not yet been to therapy to work through a lot of these self-esteem issues and like deep identity crisis. And so I look back on that time in my life and I just think about being so high anxiety, being so insecure, feeling like I had to be a certain way in order to fit in. This was around the time when spring semester, specifically a freshman year, when I like deeply, deeply, deeply wanted to be in a sorority and didn't get into any of them. And eventually rushed again sophomore year with a much different outlook on it and ended up in an incredible group of women. But like freshman year, I felt so rejected. I felt so anxious. I felt like I had to put on this persona of somebody who didn't care about anything and who was just like, flitting through life and who was just so happy-go-lucky and nothing bothered her. And it was crushing me inside. And I don't like the way I feel when I think about that time in my life. And when I see pictures of myself from that time in my life, I deeply remember in my body what that felt like every day. And I had very short curly hair at that time. I cut my hair it was before I went to college. My hair was short like when I arrived at Penn. I don't remember when I cut it. Maybe it was over the summer. No, this doesn't matter. But no, it was right before high school graduation. Anyway, it was even shorter than it is now. And I wore it curly a lot at that time. And I didn't realize until this week, seeing that picture of me with my short curly hair, that is the shortest I've ever had my hair. Currently, as we speak, this is the shortest that I've had it since then. And I didn't realize until I saw that picture how much I associate unknowingly, subconsciously, my short curly hair with my emotional state at the time, my emotional instability, my insecurity. And so much of me feeling insecure about myself is intertwined with what my hair looked like at the time. And I remember it deeply in my body. And I didn't realize that until this week. And for whatever reason, a variety of reasons, including, racial identity stuff, I started straightening my hair on a regular basis at some point, maybe sophomore year. And I very rarely wore it curly in college after that. And I don't think those two things were related per se. Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, I need to start straightening my hair because I'm really insecure, like consciously. But I did. And therefore, I have this very deep connection of insecurity with my curly hair, both because I think a lot of curly girls can relate to not feeling like their hair is the typical beauty standard in the US, and also because I happened to be wearing it curly and short a lot during this time in my life when I just felt really awful all the time and was hiding it in my curls, if you will. And that was really helpful for me to realize. I unpacked that in therapy today, actually, this morning, and was like, like this, I didn't make that connection until that picture popped up this week. And I'm now realizing why when I was at the salon getting my hair cut and I saw myself in the mirror for the first time, why my initial reaction was to cry. I didn't. But not that it would have been bad if I cried, obviously. But my initial reaction was like, oh no, what have I done? Over the last 3 weeks, I am very, very, very happy with what I have done. But that was my initial reaction. And I didn't know where it had come from until this week. My body remembers. My body saw my face with shorter curly hair and remembered those emotions. The brain is truly a wild place. And so I share this in case anybody else has had a similar experience. But it's been really healing to love my hair and my shorter curly hair and to like fluff it up and want it to have more volume and like feel like that's so fun. That has been really healing for me and would not have been possible 10 years ago. Clearly not 20 years ago. And it's just been really awesome. It's been really, really awesome. And thank you all also for your curly tips that you've given me in the comments and my DMs, etc. Because the first time I did my hair myself post haircut, I used the gel that my hairstylist used, but I didn't use enough. I didn't use as much as she did. And it meant that it didn't last as long. But the other thing was that somebody pointed out in my comments that having a different curl pattern at the back of my head may also mean that that hair back there has a different porosity level and therefore might need a different amount of product. And so I used more gel overall, but I also used more in the back than the front. And like, if you're watching the YouTube, you can see how curly it is back there. That was not true last week when I did it the first time myself. So thank you for that insight. And what I'm trying to do is change 1 or 2 small things at a time each time I do my hair because I want to understand what's actually making the difference. So eventually I do want to diffuse my hair, but I didn't do it this time because I wanted to fully understand what using more gel was going to do. And I think next time I might want to try some of my curl cream products that are like a little bit lighter and see what that looks like. Also air drying, but again, only changing one thing at a time. Then like go back to gel and try diffusing. I don't know what order I'll do it in, but we're running a controlled experiment around here is what I'm saying. So yeah, so it's just been really fun. And like I said, really healing. And I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful that I am able to have this relationship with my hair that I really haven't ever before. Also this week, actually, as I'm recording right now, technically it's tomorrow, is Skyline's and my 2-year anniversary. Like how? The time flies. And also it feels like there's this duality of it. He and I were talking about this at our anniversary dinner, which we went to a couple nights ago. There's this duality where it simultaneously feels like no time at all. Like, oh my God, how has it been 2 years? Time really flies. And also, this person has been in my life for so long. Like, he's such a pillar of my life. I can't imagine my life without him. And also, how has it been 2 years? It's this weird duality. And we had a great anniversary dinner. We went to Theodora in Fort Greene, which is probably our favorite restaurant that we've been to together in the city. And it's really, really hard to get into. So we set Resi notifications for like every single day of this next 2 weeks. And so we happened to go on a random Tuesday that wasn't our anniversary, but we treated it like our anniversary dinner. And it was just really fun. And we ate amazing food. It's so, so good. The hype is real, in my opinion. It's deserved. And we talked about like what we've loved over the last 2 years. We've talked about what we're looking forward to over the next 2 years and beyond. And it was just such a lovely dinner having all of those conversations. And I want to share with you something that he said to me that just really hit me in the heart, for lack of a better phrase. So we were talking about like the things that we love the most about our relationship and about the other person and, you know, just sharing gratitudes, I guess you could say. And something that he shared was the first thing really that he shared about me is how sentimental I am and how I treat everything that we do with reverence. And that I do, that I treat, the way that I treat, I'm like getting a little emotional and not paraphrasing him very well right now, but basically how I treat everything that I do with so much reverence. And that I'm so sentimental, which wouldn't necessarily be something that you would expect meeting me for the first time. And not something that he expected, but something that he really loves about me. And it makes him, he said, reflect more on the things in his life that he really loves, me included, but in general, and to be more in the moment, mindful and present of, making memories and wanting to preserve memories. And, he talked about how I have all of these little mementos from different date nights we've had or different trips that I've taken. And I kind of jokingly was like, yeah, and then I never do anything with them. Yeah, I mean to. I have very good intentions, but I never end up like making a scrapbook or whatever. And he was like, that's not the point. Like, the point is that you have that sentiment and that you do feel so much in the moment gratitude for a thing that you're going to look back on fondly. And he really admires that. And it was just a really sweet thing. And I just, it made me feel really warm inside. And it was just like a really lovely dinner. And so we talked a lot about the last 2 years and, our favorite trips and our things that we love about each other and things that we've loved doing together and all of those things. And then, things that we're excited about over the next couple of years. Obviously, there's a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to in the very near future. I've been talking about ring shopping and ring designing a lot over on the Patreon. So if you want to hear the details about all of that, that's been over on the Patreon. But we are deep in the process of custom designing a ring. And we're almost done. It's very exciting. And then we move on to the when will it happen phase. And so it was just a really lovely dinner. And I really am looking forward to so much. And most of all, just really grateful about the life that we've built together and the relationship that we've built and just the everything about it. It's just, it's really great. It's just really great. And I look back, especially kind of thinking back on that story that I told about, 19-year-old me. I look back and I have so much love and compassion for that 19-year-old girl. And I just know that I could never have been in the relationship that I'm in now and contributing to this type of relationship at that time, nor 10 years ago, probably even. And so I'm very grateful to my younger self for having done the work that I've done to be able to participate in this type of relationship. And obviously, I'm not perfect and he's not perfect and we're not perfect. And, we like, there's stuff that comes up in this episode when my conversation with Monica, just chatting about like relationship dynamics and things. But overall, I'm really happy and I'm just really grateful for all of the work that I have done to be able to be happy because that 19-year-old girl wasn't happy. She wasn't happy at all. And you never would have known that is the thing. Like, we didn't have smartphones. There are not very many videos the way that I have a lot of videos now. But if you saw a video of me, you would have thought I was happy. I was laughing a lot. I was smiling a lot. I was doing a lot. But I was deeply unhappy. And I don't think anybody knew that, to be honest. I don't even think my best friends knew that because I wasn't really letting people in the way that I do now. And like I said, I have a lot of compassion for that girl and her hair. So anyway, those are my reflections for the week. And we have about a week and a half left until we leave for our anniversary trip, which I'm very, very excited about, to kick off a month of May where I will be in my own bed for like 4 nights of the month of May. So that's going to be quite the journey. So spending the next couple weeks just kind of getting ready for all of that, really. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot. It's obviously of my own design. I did not have to be traveling this much, and I am very lucky that I get to. And also, it's going to be a lot. So preparing for that, before I leave, I'm like looking out my window right now at all of my empty flower beds that it's finally hot enough to plant. So I'm maybe going to do that this weekend. I'm excited about that. Get my little urban garden going again this year. And then we'll be off on vacation. And then I'll have my girls trip, Finding Mr. Height girls trip to Crete. We're doing Athens for a few days and then Crete. And it's just going to be a great month. It's going to be a great month. Before we get to Monica, we do have this week's media mention. So this video, or it's really a carousel post, an account was served to me on TikTok recently. And the creator's name is Amanda Dodson. Her handle is @nestingyourlife on TikTok. She has a book out, which is called Tidying the Abyss, which I am definitely going to check out. But the post that was served to me is from like a few months ago, but it just was served to me on my FYP a couple days ago. And it's about how everybody is on two different axes from like a spectrum perspective about how they clean their apartment or their home. And there are 4 types of cleaners, according to this post. And the framework that she lays out is that everybody lies somewhere on this spectrum. There's a tidy to cluttered spectrum, one axis, and then there's a sanitized to natural, which I appreciate that she said natural and not dirty spectrum. And when you cross those two axes, you get these 4 types, like in the 4 quadrants. And obviously everybody, it's not that black and white. You can be like different places on this spectrum. So each box is like people that are on one side of one spectrum and one side of another, right? So type 1 is tidy and sanitized. This is like your friend whose home looks like a hotel room at all times, or like you walk into their home and you're thinking, does anybody even live here? I think we've all been in homes like that. Everything has its exact place, but everything is also so clean and they are not chill about it. Type 2 is tidy and natural. So it's still organized and everything has a place, but the deep clean maybe is not happening on a regular schedule. It's functional, but it's not like overly fussy. I would say on my best days, I am a type 2. I'm like not very good at cleaning. And that is why I hire someone to do that and have for quite a long time. But in my best state, I like everything to have a place and I'm good at creating those places. What I'm not good at is keeping those places. On my best days, I'm a type 2. Then we have type 3, which is cluttered but sanitized. So things are everywhere, but the surfaces are wiped down and I think the phrase she used was it smells like Lysol. Like everything is sanitized, right? There's like visual chaos, but it's not dirty. And that's actually type 3s will, as she said, will often say, I'm messy, but I'm not dirty, Then type 4 is cluttered and natural. So there's shit everywhere and also not very clean. On my worst days, I am a type 4. I hate that I ever descend into type 4. And that is the reason that I outsource cleaning, because I do not want to descend into a type 4. But on my worst days, I do. And it's so relevant. This post was so relevant to me because the last slide of it was about how like couples often are 2 different types. And then they kind of have to navigate when they move in together how to balance between 2 types. And the comments were really illuminating in that fact. And I think it's genuinely something that people underestimate when they're dating because, you're falling for the person, not their apartment. But then 6 months into living together, you're like white knuckling it because they left a dish in the sink and you're a type 1, And so I think knowing your type, but also knowing your partner's type and being able to kind of openly talk about how you're going to navigate these things is really useful. And it's useful even if you are the same type, because Skyline and I are actually exactly the same type. And when I say that, I mean that he is also on his best days a type 2 who descends into type 4 on his bad days. And that is dangerous. Two type 4s descending into type 4 at the same time, not good. Not good. And so that's why I'm very glad that he was amenable to keeping the person that cleans my apartment on when we both live together and we now split that cost. But like, I actually think it would be more stressful probably if he was, let's say, a type 1 or even a type 3 where he was kind of sanitizing things all the time. It would certainly be more stressful and anxiety inducing for both of us because the other person is doing something that we don't like. But our house would be clean. And I'm very curious about her book, because one of the things that I was reading and kind of reading the synopses and things are about how homes descend into chaos in the first place. And I am someone whose home has descended into chaos at times. It's currently doing pretty well. But Skyline is also somebody whose home can descend into chaos if he's not careful. And so between the two of us, we could really spiral into chaos and then all of a sudden look around and be like, oh God, there's stuff everywhere. So anyway, it was really interesting. She has a lot of content about these types of things. She's a licensed social worker, and her handle is at Nesting Your Life on TikTok. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And without further ado, let's get to Monica. And we are back with Monica. Hi, Monica. Welcome to Finding Mr. Height, the podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you.
I am pumped to talk to you today. I think we were chatting a little bit before we got on the mics about kind of the ethos of my podcast, my channel, everything. And I think so much of it comes back to this fact that it feels like a lot of us, especially women, somehow inherited this rule book for relationships that like nobody wrote down and nobody questioned.
Right.
And it's in your work, you spend your time questioning it, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because I wrote a book called Bad Marriage Advice, and it was completely inspired by my oldest son, who called me one day and was like, Mom, I've met the girl I'm going to marry. I'm going to propose next month. And I was like, oh my gosh, have I
Wow.
taught you all the things you need to know? And so I sat down to write him this letter of like, just from my mama heart of all the things I thought he needed to know. And it really turned into me busting all of these marriage myths that I knew all the well-meaning, well-intentioned people who just love him were going to give him this advice about marriage. And I'm like, a lot of it turned out to be really bad. I learned through experience in my own 24-year marriage, as well as working with couples through the years. And so that's how that came to be. So yes, you're right. I do spend a lot of time questioning the things that we just kind of take as advice.
Yeah. So, not to put you on the spot, but now that I know that kind of background of where it came from, I'm curious, was there one sort of marriage rule or piece of advice that he was like the most surprised you thought was a load of crap?
That's so interesting. I've never asked, but I'm going to now because I know they read the book. They're
Yeah,
so great and they were so supportive as I was, promoting the book and all of the things. And so I know they were reading it, but I never asked him that specific question, but now I'll have to go ask him.
I'm so curious. What about overall, like as you talk to people who've read it, was there one thing that stood out that most people or the most people were surprised about?
I would say that just in general, this idea that people or somebody who really, really loves you is just going to know how to treat you. And
Mm,
I think that somehow we get this idea, this fantasy, a fairy tale idea that
yeah.
if your partner loves you enough, they're just going to know how to treat you. They're just going to know how to make you happy. And I laugh so hard at that because we are all so different. And so this is why you don't get handed a manual when you get married. Like, this is how you do marriage well. Like, you'd think that that would really be helpful if we could somehow be handed like a workbook or a manual or like, this is how you treat
Right.
your partner, somebody that you love. But the reason why is because we're all so different. We're all so individual. Our experiences, our perspectives, opinions on things are so different. So you can't just hand out a generic, this is how you do marriage well. You've got to teach your partner how to treat you.
Yeah, I think so. I wrote down a bunch of like things that came to mind for me of rules that,
Yeah.
I either agree with or don't. And one of the ones I wrote down that I think we're kind of already starting to hit on is relationship shouldn't be work.
Right.
And there's a piece of that I think it gets right, where it's like constant suffering to maintain a relationship.
Right.
Certainly, red flag, that sounds bad, right?
Right.
But I think hard work and dysfunction are not the same thing.
Mhm.
And what you're describing to me, I mean, there's effort and work there to teach somebody how to make you happy.
Yes. Well, and I think something that's important to recognize is we all carry around these manuals for other people, whether you're talking about your coworker, your neighbor, your spouse. I feel like a neighbor should be conscious and thoughtful of like how loud they play their music or something
Right.
like
Yeah.
that, right? Like thinking
Totally.
about, if I have children that are asleep or something and like they're blaring their music at all hours of the night, right? So I in my mind I have my ideas of how other people should act or treat me or be, right?
Mm.
But oftentimes these are expectations we have of others that are unvoiced, and so how are they supposed to know? We think, well, that's logical to me that you shouldn't blare your music at all hours of the night, but maybe it's not so logical to them. And so we have to make our manuals known to other people. Now, there's skillful ways to do this. I'm not saying go around and just like, make demands of all the people in your life of how they should be treating you or acting, right? But there
Right.
are skillful ways to teach other people how to be in relationship with you, what you
Mm.
do and don't appreciate, how you feel loved or cared for. And when they do or don't um, take your invitations to treat you in a certain way, then you set boundaries. But this is all your responsibility. It is your responsibility to create the relationship that you want or expect with other people. And the consequences of not doing this are a lot of resentment and disappointment and dysfunction, as you said. So, yes, it is work to create healthy relationships with the people around you, but it's really worthwhile.
Yeah. Digging into that a little bit, what is your definition of kind of a healthy relationship effort versus sort of an unsustainable strain?
Sure. I think that it's really foolish to believe that other people just know what you want, need, appreciate, right? And so there
Yeah.
are really skillful ways to go around and talk to the people in our lives about what we care about, right? So one thing, this is like a very recognizable, but the five love languages, right? Like we're all pretty familiar with the five love languages and what they are. And if we think about it, you can take the quiz. There's a free quiz, but I know that I'm a words of affirmation person. Like it's
Same.
easy for me to recognize that I really like it when people give me compliments or tell me I'm doing a good job. Like it's just part of who I am, right? And so nobody can possibly know that unless I tell them. So I went through this period in my marriage where my husband would come home and I was really overwhelmed with small children and trying to keep the house, figuring out who I was as a wife and a homemaker and a mom and like all the things, right? And my husband would come home from a long day of work and he'd be like, what happened here today? Like my kids would be running around naked and the house would be a mess and dinner wasn't ready. And, I was just like trying to figure it all out. Right.
Yeah, that's a
And
lot.
I realized that I was like, bro, he walks in the house and immediately has some sort of criticism. And I was taking it very personally as like this attack of you're not doing
Yeah.
enough. And so I could get upset and resentful and like think that he's a horrible husband. Or I could be like, hey, love, I notice that when you come home from work, the first thing you do is say something critical about the house or what hasn't gotten done or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm very sensitive to that because I feel like I've been busy all day keeping these children alive and,
Literally.
making sure that the house doesn't burn down to flames. And that's a lot of work for me. And so I would appreciate it if you could come in and say one positive thing before you launch into like what actually happened today. And he did that, right? Like I made it clear to him that you know to treat me well, to show me love, that I would appreciate one good thing, like a compliment, pointing out something positive before he launches into it. Wasn't even criticism, but it was like questions like,
Yeah.
yeah, like what happened here today? Why are the Legos all over the floor? Whatever it was. But I was explaining to him what would feel good to me, how he could treat me well. Now, he either could accept or reject my, request or my invitation to say something kind. And at
Mhm.
that point, I could like double down and set a boundary. Like, I'm not willing to hear, I'm not going to come greet you at the door if the first thing out of your mouth is going to be negative. So if you would like me to come greet you at the door and be excited that you're here and have all the kids like run and jump and hug their dad, I need you to say something nice, right? I didn't have to go that far, but I'm just giving you examples of we
Yeah.
treat people how, or we teach people how to treat us. We have to do that. We have to make requests. And then if our requests aren't being granted, then we might have to set a boundary, which is not you don't have a choice in the matter. It's this is what I will do if you choose to do this thing. So
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time working with clients. And really, that's what we're doing is we're teaching people how to treat us in our marriage, how to treat us in our dating relationship, how to treat us at work, that we have to do it.
That's such a good example of, first of all, the definition of a boundary, because I think that that gets confused a lot, where I think a lot of people, this is not even today's conversation, but I think a lot of people think that a boundary is something that you are forcing somebody else to do. Like, you
Right.
must say this thing when you get home, but it's actually about your own behavior.
Yes.
But that's an aside. I think it's so great, first of all, that you were able to communicate to that to him, and that he was receptive to that communication to then make that change. Like, that takes that two-way communication, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of skills involved in making requests or teaching people how to treat you in a way that they can accept, right? I
Right.
mean, I could have said, I hate it when you come home and say something mean, right? Like it like
Yeah.
immediately puts him on the defensive.
Of
He's
course.
guarded, like, "Oh my gosh, whatever, like you're totally just bombarding me with this thing." Or I can say, "Hey love, I've been thinking, you know, I want to point something out to you. You may not realize this, but I feel, using those I statements, there's just certain things that we can do to make it more likely that somebody who loves us is going to hear our request and
Yeah.
be able to, take it in."
Yeah, and I think so often a lot of this comes from how we saw relationships function
Mhm.
in our life. Like,
Yes.
I'm thinking of an example of my own, of my relationship with my partner. So, my parents were in very constant communication with each other.
Mm.
Like, they would call, like, my if my dad was working late and my mom was picking us up from school and we were on the way home, she would call him from the car. And just a quick, like, "Hey honey, like, I have the kids, how's your day going?" Like, little things like that, and they would
Yeah.
talk for maybe, I don't know, 45 seconds, but they did that a lot throughout the day. And then when I left for college, and ever since, I do the same thing with them.
Mm.
And so my dad passed away, so not him anymore, but with my mom, I will talk to her 3 or 4 times a day, briefly, because we'll call each other when I'm walking to the subway, or, she'll call me when she's running out to grab her coffee in the morning, little things like that. And I didn't realize until being in relationships as an adult how that formed how I think people should, and I'm putting that in quotes,
Yes.
communicate in a
That's in your
relationship.
manual. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how
So,
do
like,
people know that unless you don't teach them?
they don't. And so, like, I would constantly, when I was first dating, Skyline is what I call my partner. When I was first dating him, I would be calling him like that when I'm on my way to the subway or all those things.
You're like,
And he liked it. And he was like, "Yeah, oh, I guess you're on your way to the subway again." And one time I said to him, I was like, "Yeah, this is why I do that. It's because that's what I saw my parents do. And I would love it if you randomly called me. Like, that would be so nice."
yeah.
And now he does.
Yeah.
And it was that
That's
simple.
amazing. Yeah.
But it was
So
something
cool.
that, like, I could have internalized, and I did in my youth, that him not doing that meant that it wasn't a good relationship and he wasn't the right person for me and didn't love me.
Right. Because he couldn't read your mind. That's what
Right,
most
because he
people do.
didn't. Exactly, like, he didn't naturally call me in little moments in his day ever, therefore, not the right relationship for me. Like, that's
Right.
what I could have told myself.
Right. Yeah. And how tragic would that have been?
Completely, completely. Okay. So we have a list. We have a list of different pieces of marriage advice, relationship advice. I want to get your take on some of them.
Yes.
The first one that I hear so much is never go to bed angry.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think the reason you might hear that so much is because it has biblical roots, right? People are like, well, it's in the Bible that we shouldn't let the sun set on our anger. And I
Oh,
get that, which means I think that
I
we
didn't know
shouldn't.
that.
Oh, yeah. So I used to know the scripture reference, but I don't anymore. But yeah, so that you can find that in the Bible. And so I think people take that
Wow.
super literally that we shouldn't let the
Yeah.
sun set on our anger. I would like to interpret that as we shouldn't harbor resentment because
Sure.
there are ways to not. Um, but my advice would be to take a break. If you are not coming up with a solution and it is late into the night, you probably are not going to have the perspective or wherewithal to figure it out. And so you love to use the acronym HALTS. If you are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed, please take a break. Part of taking a break is going to bed. I will tell you, as a young, engaged person, at my bridal shower, I had these cards and people would write advice. And so
Yeah.
many people wrote, never go to bed angry. And then my husband and I got married and we had this receiving line. And all of these wonderful humans who were older than us and seemingly in really happy marriages, which I'm sure they were, and they probably
Yeah.
did follow this advice and it worked out okay for them. But they would come through and be like, you'll be fine. Don't go to bed angry, right? Like
Wow.
never go to bed angry. And I lost so much sleep over that in the beginning of my
Ironically.
marriage because I wanted to do it right so badly. And so my husband and I, just by virtue of being exhausted, would like
Yeah.
pick at each other or be grumpy or, say something that we didn't really mean late at night. And then my husband would roll over and go to sleep. And I took that as a personal, he doesn't care. He doesn't
Yep.
value our relationship. Like
Our
he's
marriage is
gonna,
failing.
yes, he's gonna leave me. All of the things, right? I would spiral into this panicky stress ball. I couldn't sleep. I would stay up all night crying and journaling and trying to figure out like what is the next step? How do we overcome this massive hurdle? And I remember one day just having this like flood of, he cannot possibly understand what's happening inside of me, right? Like
Yeah.
he can't read my mind. He can't know the pain that this literally causes me. Not only that I feel like he doesn't care, but also like I'm trying to follow this advice and he just doesn't value our relationship enough to
Right.
care that all these people said, don't go to bed angry.
Yeah. And he's
Like
just
you're
thrown their advice out the window.
right. Like, so I remember I remember just being like one time when I was like a little bit calmer, like it wasn't so bad. And I like deet, deet, and I was like, hey, I have this long line of divorce in my family. I saw my parents divorced, my grandparents divorced. And so I take our marriage really seriously and I want to do all of the things possible to ensure our success. And when you roll over and start snoring, I am left feeling this massive sense of abandonment and dismissed and like you don't care about me. And he's like, oh, he's like, well, I love you. He's like, I'm not
Yeah.
going anywhere. I just feel like it's probably not going to get resolved in this very moment. And so I feel like if we both went to sleep and talked about it in the morning, it would be better. And I was like,
Oh.
seems logical. And so I remember just going, could you like maybe say something like that just to like
Yeah. Use your
help
words.
calm my nerves? Like, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Let's sleep on this and we'll talk about it in the morning. Like a shortened version of that, anything. Right.
Yes.
And he's like, sure, I can do that for you. And so following that night, now anytime we were like upset with each other, he'd be like, he'd like kind of put his hand on my like, I love you. I'm not going anywhere, but I got to get some sleep. Right. And I was like, oh, just this feeling of like calm would come over me, not only because he would say that, but then subsequently every morning he would roll over, wrap his big, strong arms around me, and say, I'm so sorry I was grumpy last night or that we fought or like, can we talk about it? And I was like, oh my gosh, so much trust was built in that whole, series of events where I was able to be like, he can't possibly know what's happening inside of me. Like, he
Yeah.
can't read my mind. He doesn't know what I need. And if I just ask, what might happen? And so I feel like the advice, don't go to bed angry, is horrible. Like,
I agree.
don't go to bed feeling neglected and like the relationship is on the rocks. Like, do what you need to do to like, get to some certain point where you can get yourself to sleep. But
Yeah.
definitely don't follow the advice, never go to bed angry, because you will lose a lot of sleep over it.
And
Somebody
that
will.
I think it's even worse. Like the more tired you get, the worse the argument is likely going to get because nobody has ever become more rational with less sleep.
Right. Right. So the shortened version of that is never go to bed angry. It's definitely better to stay up arguing, like
Yeah, for
illogically,
sure.
about everything that you've ever experienced in your whole life.
Yeah, and then you can both be super tired the next day and argue about something else.
Right. That's
Super fun, and then
definitely going to be better for the relationship.
around and around we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Get some
Yeah,
perspective.
I also really don't like that advice, and I also do really think it's important to emphasize the point that you made about not going to bed feeling abandoned or not
Yeah.
going to bed feeling like insecure in the relationship, even if the thing that you're arguing about or disagreeing about isn't yet resolved.
Yes. It's a good template for how to ask for what you need, right?
Mhm.
We've got to figure it out for ourselves first. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I had to do some work. We started talking about the work that was necessary. And a lot of
Yep.
times the work is just like, what do I need here? Like, what is going on inside of me? Like, let's take a moment and reflect on, one of the things we say in our work as a coach is, if you're hysterical, it's historical. And so it wasn't
Mm.
necessarily about what's happening in the very moment. It's like these feelings of abandonment that happened like in my whole lifetime. And
Yeah.
there's no way that your partner, whoever you're in a relationship, can possibly know all of that unless we teach them.
Yeah. Yeah, Skyline and I decided very early on that we were going to cuddle before we go to sleep, even if only for 30 seconds, even
Yeah.
if like one of us is exhausted, even if we are arguing, which like has helped so much because it's like we have the same bedtime routine no matter how our day has gone.
Mhm.
Like we are going to end, assuming we're spending the night in the same place, we are going to end the night touching. And then
Yes.
we separate because neither of us can sleep cuddling. But
We're the
like
same
that's
way. We
how
love to be touching, but, like, if we're not, like, getting
yeah.
along, it's might just be, like, a foot, like, I'll touch his calf with my foot.
Yeah, I like typically can't sleep with when anyone's touching me. I also sleep on my back, so in order for someone to be cuddling with me, they would have to be like on me like a koala. Like I'm not a very easy person to cuddle with when I'm asleep. But regardless of how the day went, we're going to end it right before we go to sleep, touching and connecting physically.
Yes. Those
And like
rituals are
that has helped a lot.
beautiful, and naming them and why they're important to you is also so valuable.
Yeah. And yeah, it really has been for us. It's not something I'd done in previous relationships. It was something he brought up actually that he
Hmm,
wanted to do. Um and it's been really great.
love it.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing I want to ask you, the advice, don't sweat the small stuff.
Because
What
where
do
do
we
you
think?
think the big stuff comes from? Just out of thin
Uh,
air?
literally, yes. That was my exact thought. Sure. Does every little tiny irritation deserve a whole conversation? No. But I want you to expand on that because the small stuff leads to the big stuff.
Yeah. It's so funny because I've been married to my husband for almost 24 years. And I talk about this so much, but how grateful I am that I taught him super, super, super early in the relationship how to put the toilet paper on the roll. And I think
Mm.
about it when I go to the bathroom, how frustrating would it be 24 years when you sit down on the toilet? And the reason I thought about this morning specifically is because my son goes to lifts in the morning, and so I was picking him up. I get a phone call from my daughter, and
Mhm.
she's 17, and she's like, "Mom, where are you?" And I was like, "I'm picking up Ike from school or whatever." And she's like, "I need toilet paper." So she had sat down on her own
Okay.
toilet. Like, she's responsible for her own toilet, right? She sits
Yeah.
on her own toilet. There's no toilet paper. There's nobody in the house. She's completely stranded there. And I'm like thinking how grateful I am that not only I taught my husband to replace the toilet paper when it runs out, but I taught him how to do it the right way, like going over, right?
Oh, that's the
Because
only way.
how frustrating is it when you come in and the toilet paper is the wrong way? Like, that's so annoying. That is a very small thing. How hard would it be for me to, like, every once in a while to like flip the toilet paper around? Probably not going to ruin my day, but how grateful I am that I never have to think about it. That in our bathroom, the bathroom that my husband and I share, I never run out of toilet paper. And anytime I sit down to use the toilet paper, it's going the right direction.
Yeah.
And I taught him that right when we first got married, when it was a very small thing. And I could have been like, "Oh, it's such a small thing, the way the toilet paper is loaded on the roll. Like, I should probably not say anything." But my husband was like, "I don't care. Like, I've never thought about how I load the toilet paper. So yeah, let's do it your way."
I think that's a great example too of like there are some things that one person will really care about and another person doesn't care
Yes.
about at all. And then why not just do it the way the person who cares wants to because they care.
Yeah. So this is like a great example of why to sweat the small stuff. Because I was
Mhm.
on a podcast and this guy was like, he was very argumentative with me. He's like, "Well, what if I think that the right way to do the toilet paper is underneath?" And I'm like, how great to get that out early in the relationship, right? So, like, if I want it over and you want it under, let's get that out on the table and let's talk about ways that we can solve this. So, maybe there are some bathrooms in the house that get the toilet paper this way, and there are some bathrooms in the house that get the toilet paper this way, and we just know that. And so, if I'm having a crappy day, I'm not going to use the bathroom where the toilet paper is wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to intentionally use the bathroom where I'll be in a good mood because the toilet paper is loaded the right way. So there's lots of ways to solve that problem between the two of you, but you've got to make it explicit before you can solve the problem. If both of you are just like, "Oh, I hate the way they load the toilet paper for 20 years," how does that help anyone?
Yeah, I'm like I was trying to think of like an example that I can think of because my partner and I agree on how the toilet paper should be, because we're both right. And but I
Right.
did think of something. I prefer, but don't really care that the bath towels are on the rod that's like across the room from the shower. The bathroom's not very big, right? But like aesthetically speaking, I think it looks better if the bath towels are over on the rod. However, that means you can't reach them from the shower. You have to exit the shower
Mhm.
wet.
Hmm.
My partner asked if we could get little hooks for our shower to keep the bath towels there because he doesn't like getting out of the shower wet to go get the towel.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I should also mention he moved into my apartment that I had lived in for almost 5 years. Or
So
excuse me, 3
you have a
years.
system for how you do the
Uh-huh.
towels. Yes.
Yeah. But I heard him say that, and also he showers, like, literally twice as
Way
often
more.
as I do. Yeah, he's obsessed with showers. I'm like, "You know what? That's fine. That's not my preference, but I don't really care, and it sounds like it's frustrating you every time you get out of the shower and you're freezing wet going across the bathroom. So fine." And it's so small, to your point, like, is that really gonna break up our relationship? That thing, no. But what if he was starting every day annoyed because
Mhm.
he has to cross the bathroom to get the towel, and now
And
he's
then the
got that
bathroom's
little
wet and
kernel.
somebody slips.
Yeah.
This is such a beautiful example of how I teach couples to solve problems like this. Like, first of all, you can't solve it if you're stuffing it, if you're sweeping it under the rug, stuffing it, walking on
Yeah.
eggshells, not sweating the small stuff, right? I'm like, bro, this is a small thing that will become a big thing if you don't deal with it, right? So we talk about it, we communicate about it, and then we solve the problem. There's literally hundreds of ways to solve this problem. Now, what I teach couples is collaboration. So there's compromise, which you could do effectively, is like maybe you have a hook on the thing and you have a towel and you just meet in the middle somewhere, and it's just like randomly, you give
Yeah.
up stuff, he gives up stuff. Or you could discuss it in a way that is collaborative, which means this is what I value. I value that the bathroom floor is not slick. So I would rather not like get out of the shower wet, create a big puddle, get the towel. Okay, so he values that. You value aesthetics. So now we have it out on the table, like, this is what this is what my partner values, this is what I value, here's my reservations about what they value and my reservations about what they value, right? And you go back and forth until you understand why your partner feels a certain way that might be different than yours. Now
Mhm.
you can collaborate and create a solution that's better than either of you could have ever come up with or would have ever come up with on your own. This is the value of two, why two is better than one, why you don't just melt in or compromise your way through a relationship, because then you're not creating value and respect and honoring each other's positions. So when you have bigger issues like how much screen time are we going to give our children, it's great that I understand my husband's position on it and he understands my position on it. So it's not like we're constantly tugging and pulling and trying to compromise on it. It's like when I'm parenting on my own and he's not around, I'm like, I know what my husband values. I disagree. I have a different idea about it, but I can honor his values as I work with my children when he's not around, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you hit on one of the other things I was going to talk about, which is that I think a lot of people think of compromise as truly meeting in the middle. But firstly, that's not always what it means, but also not always possible.
Yeah.
Like, if, like in my example, yeah, sure, we could have towels where I like them and towels where he likes them, but that's still not really meeting in the middle because that's not meeting my need
Aesthetic, right.
aesthetically, which again, I didn't really care that much about. So this was an easy one to be like, no, that's fine. We'll just have an empty towel bar. But a lot of times it's not possible to meet in the middle because the middle is not going to satisfy one person's or both people's visions.
Right. Well, what I love about the towel example is because I know already your value and his value, the way we can solve this problem is aesthetics probably don't matter that much when it's just the two of you using the bathroom. But if you had company, then maybe we take the towel off the hook and put it on the bar, right? So
It's
it's like I can extrapolate what to do in certain scenarios when I know my partner's values. So that's the beautiful thing about communication and collaboration over compromise.
It's so funny that you brought that up because I forgot about the other part of the conversation. We have two bathrooms. No one ever uses our bathroom. It's off of our
Right.
bedroom. There's almost no reason for people to use that one. They only use the guest bathroom, and that one has the towels on the bar.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
and your partner would know that like if we have company coming in town, let's make sure, because I know that Ali cares about what this looks like. So let's make sure that there's a towel hanging on the bar if my buddy's going to come stay with us.
Yeah. And I think that also hits on something that I see come up in conflict a lot with couples, which is like one person doesn't think what the other person cares about matters.
Hmm.
And so therefore they're more hesitant to prioritize it. And I think aesthetics is a really good example. And I see that a lot. I don't want to generalize, but I see it a lot with my female friends and their male partners where like they care a lot about what something looks like. Let's say when people come over and the guy's like, my friend doesn't care.
Yeah,
And
like the
she's like,
pillows
but
on the
I
couch, or
do.
yeah, there's thousands of examples of this. Yes.
Right. And then she's like, and I really like to see somebody say, well, I don't think that matters and my friend won't care, but you care. And therefore let's prioritize it.
And I'll tell you, because there's two ways when people are so different, and we're attracted to our opposites, right? Just by virtue of heterosexual relationships, we're married to somebody who's or in a relationship with somebody who's different than us. But also we're attracted to our opposites for a good reason, right? Like
Mhm.
our partner is going to think about things that we don't think about. They're going to think about things differently than we think about. And it's valuable because now you have I like to like you've met people, I'm sure, that have like their way of thinking about it is right, and that's the only thing they're willing to consider. Like won't take anybody else's values or opinions into consideration. Everything else is
Mhm.
dumb. It has to be their way. And
Yeah.
I think of those people as like literally parked in front like in the butt of in an elephant's butt, like they're just
Okay.
looking at an elephant's butt, right? And then I think of people who are like open to considering other people's perspectives and values and experiences and like desires about things. And I'm like, they're probably looking at a different part of the elephant because no two people can see things in the exact same way. So you're either lying about it or you're like not standing up for yourself, right? But
Right.
somebody else brings in a different perspective. They're looking at a different part of the elephant. So the more ideas, perspectives we can bring in, the better we're going to be able to see this magnificent animal in front of us. But if we're not willing to consider our partner's point of view at all, we're just going to be standing there in the butt of an elephant.
Nobody wants that.
No. And a good way to bridge this is another like great thing that I like recently realized.
Mhm.
If our partner is doing something different than us, which is probably the case, whether they
Right.
value the aesthetics or whatever, they're seeing something differently, we can either resent it because
Mhm.
like this would be so much easier if my partner would just think more like me or do things my way. It would just really make things easier. So we can just carry all this resentment, or we can value like what is the gift in their opinion or perspective that is different than mine. And what bridges this gap from resentment to value is humor. I love to follow accounts online where they like poke fun at the differences between men and women, or like it's so valuable to just be able to stand back and laugh at our differences.
Yeah, I actually, on that note, I was thinking as you were talking about the elephant's butt analogy that that could actually be a really funny way to lighten the mood if you're in a situation with your partner where you're seeing things super differently. Obviously, having explained this analogy to them previously, to be able to say, like, I feel like we're just in the elephant's butt right now.
Yes,
Like,
totally.
I could see that really diffusing a situation.
Yeah, that's like a code word, or like
Yeah,
a I
yeah.
love like code phrases or code words that like it's a shared language. I also think that's so uniting for relationships is like when you have something that only you understand. That's like a code word. You're like,
Yeah.
I feel like you're just staring at the elephant's butt right now. Would you like to see its face?
I
But
love that. I love that. I think you're so right. I think humor can bring so much into those situations, and especially if you're able to establish that outside of when you're in maybe a more tense moment.
yeah, humor doesn't go over well when both people are like heightened emotions, right? But if you can
Yeah.
talk about it later, like I love like inside jokes or experiences that are just yours. Like my favorite is when my kids were little. I have four children, and when they were little, they used to look at me up at me with their big brown eyes, me and their dad, right? And you know, if they were nervous or they would say, hold you, right? And I knew that meant like give me hold me, right? And so
Yeah.
now our kids are grown and teenagers, like they don't say that anymore, but my husband and I use that when we need a little bit of comfort, right? When I've had a really hard day and my husband comes home, I'm like, "Hold you." And he knows exactly what that means. Somebody looking on, I'm sure, could like extrapolate, but that's our language. Like that's how we communicate with each other. We know exactly what that means, no explanation needed.
I love that. That's so special. Okay, I have one last one for you today, and that is your partner should be your best friend.
Hmm, interesting.
What are your thoughts? We hear it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, great. Yes, I think that we have a lot of expectations of modern marriage. We want to be married to our best friend, our lover, our adventure buddy, someone who challenges us, somebody who validates us. Like we want everything. And
Yep.
it doesn't always come in the form of one person. And so
Yeah.
this gets into a lot of, should I stay or should I go? Is this relationship right? I like to say, your partner will never meet all of your needs. It's not their job. It's
It
not their
can't.
job to make you happy. It's not their job to provide for your needs. That is an inside job. The best, healthiest relationships are when I know exactly how to take care of myself, my partner
Mhm.
knows how to take care of themselves, and we choose to be together. That means that if I need something from a best friend, meaning like I need somebody to fight an enemy with me, or like listen to my TED talk about how my neighbor is jamming out to loud music at all hours of the night, right?
Yeah.
And my partner isn't doing that in the way that I ask them to do it, then yes, I need to be able to call my mom or my best friend or whatever. But knowing what your partner is capable of and willing to do for you and what they are not is very, very, very valuable. Like if my partner doesn't meet my needs for some reason, is there some other way that I can get this need met? So it actually, when we can take our partners off the hook for everything, it opens up a lot of creativity in our mind. I'll give you two examples of this. One, I told you I was a words of affirmation girl. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time by myself at home. So I do lots of laundry and meal prep and I see clients and I do podcast episodes. And at the end of the day, I've spent it all. I make doctor's appointments and run errands and all the things. And nobody has witnessed all of these things that I've done. However, I, for a long time, expected my husband or my children to come home and be like, wow, you got so much done today. You're freaking amazing. Guess
Yeah.
what? That was not happening. Even though I was asking for it, my kids were like, "What? That doesn't even make sense." In my head, right? So what I started doing was giving that to myself. I
Mhm.
get in bed at night and I still do this to this day. I'm like, you crushed that day, Monica. Holy crap. 6 loads of laundry, like meal prep, 6 podcast episodes recorded and, 2 clients helped. Like, wow, Monica, you did a great job today. Now, if my husband or kids offer me some sort of appreciation for something, amazing, but I can do that for myself.
Mm.
So that's like one. The other one was this couple that I worked with in the very beginning when I started coaching, and she was a food blogger, and so she loved to cook and create, and she would make a huge mess in the kitchen. When her and her partner got together, they made an agreement that she
Mm.
would do all of the cooking and prepping and all of that, and he would clean the kitchen. Later in their relationship, he got busier and wasn't able to do this anymore, and she carried a lot of resentment. Like, why is he not doing what he agreed upon early in our relationship? She was mad and mad
Yeah.
and mad and mad. And finally, we like released she talked to him. She was able to, he was like, I'm just so busy. I work in the evenings, and when I come home I want to play with my kids and hang out, and I don't want to have this problem of the kitchen that I'm always doing. So I'm not going to do it. And she was like, oh, she released him of that expectation. And immediately she was like, how else can I solve this problem? And what she figured out really quickly is that there was a teenager down the street that she could pay $3 to come each evening and clean up the kitchen so that she and her husband could hang out with the kids, put them to bed, have some time together. And it cost her $3. And so when we release our partners of the expectations of being all the things that we expect them to be, we can solve these problems in really creative, awesome ways. So sorry, that was my TED talk.
No, I love it. I'm curious, like in situations like that, how you navigate relational dynamics where maybe one person feels like they're the one that is always figuring out these things. Because there's a lens from that story that I'm hearing too, where it's like she is fully figuring out how to solve all of this because
Mhm.
realistically, he probably also wants the kitchen to be clean.
Mhm.
So, like, the first thing that, to be totally honest, the first thing that comes to my head is why is it her problem to figure out to get this teenager when we
Mhm.
both want the house to be clean? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And she's
but
cooking
I
the food
think
for everyone.
yeah, that's a great question. I think it meant more to her. I think he was like, "It doesn't bother me if the kitchen is a mess when I come home and I play with my kids and I put them to bed and I want like, that interaction time. It doesn't bother me that the dishes are out." But it bothered her, right? Because the next day, so I think that just naturally fell on her because she cares about it more, kind of like,
Hmm.
the towels. But you're right. And I think that if she felt like, why is it up to me? Like, this was your job. You should solve the problem. Then I think that would requires a conversation. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling put upon that this was your job and you decided not to do it. This was our agreed upon. Like, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it. How are we going to get it done? You figure it out.
Yeah.
So I mean, it always just requires some conversation, some
Totally.
communication.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a theme throughout all of the things that we talked about, right? Is like that communication and hopefully both people
Mhm.
showing up to that conversation wanting to equally contribute to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't even say it very well. It would be like, "How can we figure this out?" But I would
Mhm.
appreciate it if you took the responsibility to more figure it out. Like, maybe we can
Right.
brainstorm together, but, like,
Yeah.
since this was your job, I would hope that you would take the lead in figuring out how to solve the problem. Like that's what that looks like in a way that's not like I'm blaming you, this is your fault, I'm attacking you. It requires skill. And here's the beautiful thing about relationships. You're not just born knowing how to do this. It's like any other skill. If you want to learn a sport or an instrument, you've got to prioritize learning how to do it. And it's going to be messy. You're going to be bad at it before you're good at it. Relational skills are the same. If you
Mm.
want to have a great relationship with anyone, whether it's your partner, your coworker, your neighbor, you've got to prioritize, I want to learn how to skillfully navigate this relationship. And where
Yeah,
can I go to learn those skills? Podcasts, books, coaches. There's lots of ways, but it's very similar to learning anything you want to learn.
absolutely. I think that's a great note to end on. Such good advice. Monica, where can our listeners find you and your book?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can go to my website, monicatanner.com. There you can get my free resources like my podcast and my social media, all of that, as well as how to work with me. And there will be a link to my book, which is just on Amazon.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, we'll talk to you next week.